Da 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 da. See, like, right off the bat, I'm gonna get sued by the McDonald's people because I did that. That's my relationship with you.
It's not so much sued as that you now owe them royalties.
Just like that, like you owe us. But that's like how I met you. So it's important to like, you know.
It is absolutely true. And I got to say, I think you're rushing a little bit.
Too fast. It's like
I got to just like those last couple notes. You're rushing the syncopations.
I was a little flat on the fourth one. Oh man, dude,
I was the flat fourth one. You know? Like, that was my role.
We were
in the
called
group.
the five notes.
Which, you know, Pastor Harris, if you're listening, man, I love you, but I don't think that was the most creative thing.
Was that his name? Did he come up with that?
I'm pretty sure. No, it wasn't the five. It was the Mac Notes.
Was it the Mac Notes? Okay.
Which I dig that because. Although it does make us sound a little Scottish,
yes,
which
enough.
we weren't.
The Mac. It was nice to make McDonald's Mac money. We made Mac money. For
yes.
Like 5 tunes. You were listening to a Chatter Effect. Again, these are not interviews; they're conversations. Man, this is a long time coming. Derek Fawcett. Hey, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Derek Fawcett, singer extraordinaire, vocalist, instructor extraordinaire. You've been around the scene, man. So it's good to have you like here sitting across. I mean, we could have done this at a bar too or a coffee shop, but why not turn on microphones?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think the limiting factor as far as bar or coffee shop, they might be like, so the microphones. Can we talk about that?
I take these mics everywhere I go, man. Everywhere I go, it gets a little weird, like at church services, but still, it's what I do.
You know what? If you got like musical theater, like body mic things, you know, then no one would know. They'd be like, "What's that a guy I have on his face?"
Yeah, but when I travel with theme music too. So there's always like cats behind me. You know,
I see.
Ever see that movie? I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker?
Yes. I kind of wish I starred in it. Yeah, I love that movie.
Who are these guys?
It's my theme music.
He had like 3 players behind him. But anyway, man. So people like who've never met Derek before. What I know of you, like as far as like the underground indie celebrity status thing goes, is down the line because that's like what I heard first, and that's like, is that what got you sort of on the map? Was it down the line, or
it certainly got me traveling along the map? It certainly forced me to get out a map.
Okay, because the foreshadowing, folks, the foreshadowing here, what we're going to get into is because this guy was in a popular, you know, you guys were on the move a lot. When I first met you, you were touring a lot with Down the Line, and it's you know, it's transferred into this wonderful solo career that's starting to happen now, and you know, between that and then, you know, teaching the youthful singers of America, you have a lot of stuff going on. So it's going to be fun to talk about how they all like tie together.
I like the youthful singers of America. I imagine this group that that I just teach. Yes, hello, youthful singers of America. I would like to teach it. Like, hi.
Do you make them all hold hands at the nation's capital once a year? Did you ever do that? I had to do that once in college. I think we're all the vocal groups from college. We met at the state capitol or something.
That's cool.
Or the monument, and we're all gonna hold hands, and it was terrible.
Really?
And everybody's gonna learn like the same dance arrangement and the same vocal arrangement, and wear
so it was a little show choir situation.
Oh, dude. Oh, you know what?
Well, you are from Indiana, right?
Yeah, I am. But here's the thing: were you in like? Did you go? You went to Western?
Went to Western Michigan University. That's right.
So much talent came out of that damn place, man. So much vocal talent. I mean, musical talent in general.
Yeah.
But you know, on my end, I listen to the vocalists.
Sure.
People like you and people like Mike Harvey, who's another Indiana guy, another Northwest.
Oh, I guess
Indiana.
I knew that.
Yeah, he went to high school with my sister.
Oh, okay.
And I went to Purdue, and I was in a song company, and they just wanted to be Gold Company so bad. and he was in Gold Company, which was I guess it was like a jazz group, but then
that's right.
But it would Gold Company eventually turn into a little show choir action?
There's a little bit of that. There's like a little bit of choreography, like, you know, typical show.
Were you in it?
I was.
Okay, because I got in a song company because I'd never done like true jazz harmonies. So when I got into that, I'm like, good, show me. And then sure enough, first semester, jazz harmonies. And I'm like, this is cool. The arrangements. And then they do something fun. You know, I think everybody in that world did like a Kirby Shaw arrangement of Bridge Over Troubled Water.
Oh, yeah.
That thing?
That's well, and interesting to note, that was dedicated to if you look in the
Shaw's
the top
Crab
chart, well, it was dedicated to Steve Zagre, who was the director of Gold Company.
Really?
And part of their relationship was at that point, Steve was teaching Kirby Shaw's daughter, Holly.
Oh.
And so Holly was in Gold Company. And I think maybe with Mike Harvey, possibly. I'm not positive about that.
I remember meeting Steve. He was nice. He commended me on my Bridge Over Troubled Water solo.
Oh, nice.
And I remember thinking, who's this guy again?
Did you do the Invitational?
I did, yeah. Where it was it was at the Bismarck or something. There was one in Chicago where everybody came to.
Oh, all right.
But all I remember is first semester jazz. Like, okay, this is cool and this is hard for me who didn't have a background in that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is what I wanted. And when I was 16, I was singing lead in band, so I wanted the part. I wanted to be a tenor, just doing his part with the other. It was great. And then second semester rolled around, and then they're like, "Yeah, okay, now we want you to wear this gold vest and bow tie."
So, other than the one that you were already wearing,
I don't remember wearing. I don't feel like. I guess maybe it was a Christmas show, so I don't feel like I wore the gold until second semester.
Okay, but so no shirt, obviously.
It was just no shirt. See, that was just it was called the Jazz Pectoral Review. They called it
the Jazz Pecs.
Have you guys heard of the Jazz Pecs out of Indiana? No. So anyway, then all of a sudden I'm doing jazz hands. I'm like, the only thing jazzy about this whole thing is my hands now, just my hands. And
yes, right.
Like I was, come on, world.
Actually, the jazz hands is actually a representation of hands reaching out, hoping to grasp jazz and pull on jazz. So you can grab jazz and pull on it and get away from the show choir that you're in.
But then the fact that they never let the hands close, you lose all the time.
It's basically a cry for help.
Yes, it's
jazz
like,
help me! I would love to sing jazz right now, but I'm instead waving my hands. Somebody help!
And you're not allowed to clench, so you'll never grab that jazz.
Well, and
that's why every time I see people,
there's also blades.
Okay, what are blades? Oh yeah, blades. Sure.
Yeah, it's the show choir equivalent of a guillotine.
Yeah. Oh man, jazz hands. Well, cool, man. I'm glad we covered that. For any of you, it's a historical show now.
It's a good thing we covered show choir.
Well, so anyway, interestingly enough, I was in that world, and it's so funny because Mike Harvey, I remember him coming down. And that dude's got a past. He did a lot of work with Steely Dan and stuff like that.
Well, he's inducted in the Rock Hall for his work with them.
Man. So he
sang with Seal. And
he came down and gave us like a new theme song or something because he was in Song Company, I guess, for a minute before going to Western Michigan.
Okay, right.
So he was that guy was like a legend wherever he went during those times.
Yeah, well, he did an arrangement of "Oh What a Beautiful Morning" from Oklahoma that. He was submitting to Good Morning America as a potential new theme song.
Cool.
And it didn't get chosen, but they made this recording with the guys who were in Gold Company. I was a freshman at the time, and it was so dope, man. It was just like, and I'll play it for you. It's like, oh, what a beautiful.
Oh yeah, man!
And it's just a cappella thing, and it's totally take six.
I was just gonna say it's like a take six.
Oh
vibe.
yeah, and the guys in the group that year were just like blow your mind.
So during that, whatever, the early 2000s, I guess, but whenever that was, like, do you remember just the first time you experienced a take six and you're just like, oh my God?
I got to tell you, I heard them for the first time. I was in high school, and I got, I'm like getting into choir, like, and just like this is becoming a thing for me. So I'm going to Harmony House, which was
what is Harmony House?
That was it was a big chain of music stores.
Oh, okay.
And I would go there.
They just sold harmonies.
This is the thing is they were a major record store, specifically in Michigan, a little bit outside.
Nice.
Man, it was just that was Mecca. I would go there and like great birthday gift for me, gift certificate to Harmony House.
Wow.
And so, but I'm buying stuff, and of course, being like choir nerd, like trying to learn more about this stuff, and like. I would go to like the weird sections of the store, like, the small choral music section, and there was this thing, maybe you come across it, Spike Lee did this
Do it
documentary.
a cappella.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was, so I bought that because I'm like, oh, this looks cool. And had Take 6 on there. And I'm like, Getaway. And it's a little bit of a wonky version, I think, of Getaway Jordan.
Compared to like their studio.
Oh, yeah, it's a little,
okay.
like if you, it always struck me, like once I heard the studio version, I'm like, oh, okay. So this is, it's great, but it's just not quite as mind-blowingly
People
clean.
look for Do It a cappella and just like Google that and Spike Lee. It still
definitely
holds
put
up.
acapella on the back end of it, because if you just put Do It, you're going to go to some sites that are
don't
probably
do
going to get you in trouble.
Spike Lee Do It will be all of those
Spike Lee Do It.
experimental college films.
Yeah, that's film porn.
Yeah.
It
was good.
That's civil rights film porn.
That thing, I have that, and it's like, I still have the old school iPod, which I will never let go. By the way, did you know?
What's that? An iPod?
I know. Guess what?
I had Peapods at dinner last night.
You can sell those things on eBay. Somebody told me for like $1,200 now. An iPod, and actually because they don't make them anymore, I can't let it go because there's no device that you could put like 30,000 songs on, and I don't want to just stream it. It's my personal collection.
Well, and as much as that's like retro unto itself,
yeah.
What was this for my birthday this year? My wife got me a new
8-track player.
She got me the first vinyl record. I mean, like, it's easily been a few years, but I mean, like, with any, like, regularity, it's been, like, 15 years.
Sure.
She bought me the new Coldplay record.
How crazy.
And I just listened to it the other day. I'm like, man, this is great. There's something...
It's warm.
Some people are dark on digital outright. I'm not. But, like, there's something great about taking a plastic disc...
Yeah.
And opening a record player and putting it on there and saying... I'm going to start at the beginning, or I'm going to start at track 2, and taking this little arm and moving it. And, there's just something, we tend to like tactile things, I think generally. Like we like, using our hands to do stuff, you know? And like for activities, like there's something engaging about that. Like, okay, my brain says this, now I need to do that. And there's just something so cool. And, so then you put the needle on the record and like, I feel like I should have like scratched it. Put the needle on the record, put the needle on.
I was wondering.
And then you go do something in your house. Well, it doesn't go on forever like iTunes Shuffle, because there's only 4 or 5 songs on there. So then you kind of have to change, you have a decision to make.
Yeah.
Do you flip the record over? Do you put it? So it's like, it's almost like a long form board game, really, when you think about it, and where everybody wins at all times, And so there's something I think actually quantitatively different about listening to music that way, and in that sense, I guess it's not surprising how much it's come back. I mean,
it's nice to see it come back.
I mean, it was what was it? Something like, I mean, I'm going to get this statistic wrong, but it was like the growth in sales this past year was astonishing.
Yeah, well, didn't it top? I thought it was getting close to topping like physical CD sales at one point.
I would not doubt that at all.
But it's so weird because we are at the same time, the need for the tactile experience is we're also losing a lot of that because everybody wants to sit down and get their groceries delivered to them or just do everything via Amazon.com. All that kind of stuff. They're doing everything, and it's really weird to have that return. It's nice to see like, oh, we're going back to something.
Well, and I think that like millennials, for example, I think they think about listening to vinyl and listening to music on their phone actually as 2 different things. Like, if I'm listening to vinyl, like they're listening to vinyl, like they might be sitting at home, like, just chilling, maybe playing video games while they listen or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas, they're on the train, that they're just kind of, listening to music, but it's a completely different situation, because they can just press play and tune out,
It's nice that it's brought it back.
I think that there's something very good, and certainly audiophiles will make the case, and I think it's a good one that non-digital audio is great, and some would argue that it's better.
Somebody was talking about. Oh, I'm doing a quick mic switch here. Not a mic switch, but a.
Actually, it's Derek. Actually, if you want Mike here, I'm sure he could probably get here soon. But
it's weird because somebody was talking about just the overall change in the kind of what Napster did to because now music, CD sales are so low now compared to before, and they're grasping for anything. Where I think the record sales have helped because you can't unless you rob a record store,
right?
You can't illegally download vinyl, you know. And I think it's helped a little bit. Somebody was saying that if they were to look back, all the record labels just screwed up so terribly because when the Napster thing first hit, instead of fighting it, what they should have done is they should have collectively gotten together and bought it.
Yeah, which is what
technology.
Steve Jobs ultimately.
Because
he
now they can't keep up. They can't keep up with technology, and it's killing them. Well, anyway, I'm glad we had this throwback.
Well, no.
Talk.
I mean, it's it's pertinent for musicians out there, and aspiring musicians, and it's like the problem with anything that is a corporation is that. There's not always great incentive to innovate. If you think about what Napster came from, you reached a point, and I was working at a record store around this time, like late 90s, beginning 2000s at Coconuts here in Chicago.
Okay.
Very corporate.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of albums that had like a couple good songs on them, and they were selling for $18-20. And initially, I think people just kind of took it because they're not, most people aren't innovators, computer programmers, whatever. And there were enough intelligent people that, I'm sure there were predecessors to Napster and whatever that said, there's got to be another way.
I remember when the CDs hit, the big push was, this is new technology. It's going to be expensive. And at the time, I almost feel like it was just basically like $13 or something like that. But I remember them saying, once this starts flowing, once this becomes the mainstream device for music, prices are going to drop substantially. They said this when I remember hearing about that. And everybody kind of biting the bullet like, oh, well. And they never came down.
Yeah.
They just went up, if anything.
Well, they came down, but then they went back up.
And then to see, that's right, I forgot that at some point, it was like $18 for certain new releases.
Yeah, and in particular, I remember working at the record store, you'd have, a CD that was pretty popular, a hip-hop CD, that was, when it came out, they'd have it on sale for $12.99, but then when it went off sale, it'd shoot up to $18. And it's like, this is the problem, is that, record companies who really do and did provide a lot of infrastructure and support for acts. I refuse the notion that, record companies are all evil. It's not. I mean, they definitely
cultivated things as well.
And but they weren't innovating, and it was, in the mid 90s, it was their salad days. They were making, they had never sold so many records. They had never sold so many, CDs anyway. And so they were basically like, what, me worry? Everything's great, and that was the time, and hindsight's 20/20, but that was the time where they should have said, hey, it's 1995. In 10 years, stuff is going to be different. We don't know what it's going to be, but we need to dive into that. And we need to be on the front end of that because this isn't going to last. And I'm sure that there were voices in the industry that
there had to be
that were saying that, but I think that everybody was drunk on their success.
And I think that just happens across the board. It's those people that aren't futurists at all that are just lapping it up.
Hello, Blockbuster Video.
Yeah. By the way, there's another thing. Before eventually we have to just get into all things but we're picking your brain now. But man,
it's a large brain. You can't see this on radio, but I have a very large head. It's a giant case.
We had to have
it
crane
brain.
lifted like I was bringing a grand piano into the place. That's how we got it in here. That's how his huge brain was brought into the studio.
Actually, can we back the crane up a little bit?
And we couldn't completely get it in. I had to jump and swing like Patrick Swayze.
Outside. Yes.
What's that scene in Ghost where Patrick Swayze swings and he kicks like the big statue as it comes in? Oh, just Google it.
I like that you have Ghost at ready reference.
Yeah, how about that? You have to be ready with a good Ghost reference.
I love it.
That's when they were trying to make Demi Moore like not look hot, and she looked hot, but it's like, oh, let's throw in big overalls. We got to unhot her a little bit. Like, don't unhot Demi.
Yeah, don't
free
do
Demi.
That. Yeah,
I used to
free
say
Demi. Yes.
And then I was thrown out of the theater for that. And people weren't sure like what's going on.
What's weird is that you were the only one in the theater.
And I was the only one in the
because
theater.
it was like goes like a second run.
Yeah, this was like 2 weeks ago at at the Davis's.
It's
like
the $2 theater.
Yeah, they had a Davis 10 a.m. showing on Monday. 10 a.m. So it's just
Monday 10 a.m. That's what everybody.
Free Demi. We got to get this guy out of here. Free Demi.
He's back. He's back.
Anyway, as we get into like,
is anybody following this? Like, because I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'm holding on.
Yeah, you're there. I think you're doing a great job. I hope I can just get that ride approval because the good thing about this thing is we just bounce everywhere. So before we get into,
is that a euphemism, dude?
No. Before we get
I'm a married man, Robby.
Before we get into the, because eventually we got to get into our Disney tales and our but I do remember
that's another $20.
One of the biggest gigs of my life was at McDonald's gig because it was ridiculous. But I remember them, whatever the guy who brought us in, the mighty Jeff Morrow, legendary guy who I'm gonna have to get behind the mic eventually. But he managed to get us into Disney World, and I remember riding a very traditional Disney ride with you. It wasn't like a whoa, no. It was kind of a roller coaster, but it took us through different sites. And I just remember I was next to you, and I remember every time we went through something that was cool, maybe reminiscent of old school Disney, and it was over. You're like, all right, okay, good. That was good. That was a strong ride. That was a strong ride.
Yes. Fired up.
Your reaction after the fact was awesome.
There's a lot of positivity for me at Disney World.
Good. That's good. Somebody call Mickey. Tell him Derek approves. This is good. You were a giving Disney ride guy.
Well, you know what, and everybody that got off that ride with us felt a little bit better about their ride because they were like, yeah, that ride is worthy of applause.
This guy's right.
Or they were like, what's up with that guy?
No. I think Donald was like ready to quit, and he heard you. He's like, I'm coming back. I'm coming.
Yes.
Like,
ladies and gentlemen, Donald Duck.
Donald Duck came back because of Derek Fawcett saying, hey, not a bad ride.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm a sucker for things Disney, and
you were, because you wanted to go back our last day. You're like, you know what? Let's do it again. And I felt bad because we were all a little bit like, I don't know, man. And I think actually, realistically, I think we were all just trying to hold on to our per diem when we should have just just went back with like you had the right idea.
So I feel like we should tell people that are listening here what the hell we're talking about.
Okay, sure, yeah. So now you are officially in a Chatter Fact.
There we go.
It's crazy. I mean, it's everywhere. It's insane.
Hey, it's all right. But this is one of those like usually it's just like, hey, you can skirt around, it's fine, but we gotta let people know.
Now people are like, what the hell are they talking about? This was the gig
2006.
What you remember the year?
2006.
This is how I met this gentleman. And again, we're going to get into the fact that this guy was doing so many things, and I have to give you a lot of credit because one of the podcasts the second podcast guest, a lady named Jillian Jockson, who was a Columbia student for a bit, more known on the legitimate stage. She's been on the Shakespeare Theater.
As opposed to the illegitimate stage where we've been hanging out.
What we do. You're like, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they don't count off.
I got illegitimate stages all over the country,
she was just
it's terrible.
Look at you. I like wild rock guy Derek here. Like, yeah, but no, anyway, she was what I would consider a catalyst for the podcast because she had...
Does that make her a pod catalyst?
She was a pod catalyst because she was from the theater world where I'm, band singer guy, but she was subbing in with the band for a bit.
Okay.
With the cover band, the Final Say group. And we would have these random talks about art, and it was so cool to have this... We had the same appreciation for what we did, but I'm not a stage actor, and she wasn't truly a band person. And I remember
I loved what you've been doing in the Furious series, man. I think it's
I've been trying really hard.
And congrats, by the way, on the great sales figures from China.
People have not figured out that I'm both Vin Diesel and Chris Daughtry because you never see them at the same place. Yes. You never see them in the same place. I get that a lot.
And you definitely don't see Robby Celestin and Vin Diesel in the same place.
Never. It's never going to happen. Mainly because he'll never be caught dead in any place I go to. Like, what? I don't shop there. But besides that, No, she was a catalyst because I remember sitting down with her talking about this stuff and thinking, I want to do this again. I want to record this, and that's what birthed this. So it's just amazing to see.
Was it a long labor?
No, it wasn't. I shot it right out. Yeah, I was ready. My podcast water broke, and then boom, I had a show.
Podcast water broke.
But anyway, you are another catalyst because you were doing something that I was not doing. I had a CD. I just released it, but the time that I finished my CD, and I was able to ride that because I had some minor local celebrity status with a band I was in called Timepiece, and I was able to those guys, so clever, by the way. Those dudes, they were a cover band, and they kind of did things their own way. They would do like old school soul music, but they would go to like the trendiest club where it's just a bunch of 20-year-olds, and I was a 20-year-old, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? They're like, psh, we don't care. They're all like 50, and they just said, if the song's good, and if we deliver it right, they will come back. And the first time I had like a hot 25-year-old blonde girl come up to me and ask for more Al Green, I knew like
doing something right.
They've got it figured out.
Yeah.
And then they took it to the next step. They're like, okay, hundreds of people are coming to every place we go. Let's write some music.
All right.
So, none of us write, but you do, Robby. So go ahead, go to work. I wrote with a great guy named Buddy Getch, and then all of a sudden, our songs became more popular than the cover songs we were doing.
Nice.
But anyway, that birthed my solo CD. But I come out with the solo CD, and then after that, I get the job offer to be in Final Say to do music full time, and it's such a great safety job. And I was kind of done with the big chase. And you were just a big factor. Actually, no, wait a minute. I'm wrong. The CD was before you.
Yeah.
You're right. I had all the original material.
Yeah.
I'm getting my catalyst mixed up. I had all this original material, and I was sitting on the band CD. Yes. And you were the one who said, just
do your record,
It's
man.
you.
It's you. Yeah.
And Derek Fawcett is in the liner notes of my CD because I only knew how to do this original thing with this popular band. I was afraid to go on it alone. And you and I were on a plane coming back from this big gig, and you're like, do you, man.
Yeah, man.
And that CD would not have happened. If it would have, it would not have happened as soon as it did if it wasn't for that conversation with you. Something about you just saying do it changed everything. And that's why I specifically thank you in the liner notes because you were huge for that. But anyway, again, enough of this digression. Let's get into this. I want to hear where you were in life. I was in between leaving this popular band and searching for something else. So that's right. I wasn't in Final Say yet.
Yeah. This is well before that.
Yeah, this is well before that. Man. So I was in between.
I'm glad somebody knows your biography.
I do not. Ask me. All my facts are just wrong. Like,
yes.
Well, being a poor young woman in Mississippi, like what? No. So I remember looking. I was searching. I was just leaving that popular band and searching for something.
Yeah.
And just looking for random gigs.
Yeah.
And Jeff Morrow, who also is from Northwest Indiana, so he's from the same area.
I'll try not to hold that against him.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So he calls out of the blue, and I don't think him and I have ever even spoken. We knew of each other, but I was much younger than him, and I wasn't in his circle. So he called me up. He said, "Hey, there's this audition thing going on. Might be something huge. It's McDonald's." And I don't know about you, but I've never done the cattle call thing. I'm not a fan of it. I just never tried it.
Sure.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. A lot of people have had some great luck with it.
Well, and it's also mostly, that's mostly like a musical theater thing. It's like you're not going to get.
Did you do that often? Did you ever try the
American Idol? No.
Or anything like auditioning or?
No, a lot of my students have done it. Yeah, that was like for me. I graduated from Western. I moved to Chicago, and I wanted to start a Toto for the 21st century.
Did you?
I was.
Which is not down the line.
Which is not down the line at all. Well,
by the way, people, in case for the people that want to Google right away, Google down the line. Google Derek Fawcett. So DER.
You can do them at the same time, or you can do it separately, or you could just Google. If you Google just Derek,
you're Googleable.
I am Googleable. I suppose we all are.
Yeah.
Really,
but you've got a good Googleable presence. But anyway, you came here.
But yeah, so and I was
Toto.
Yeah, well, the thing was, I was writing stuff at the time that had horns and harmonies.
Yeah,
and I was just like, man, this is where I think it could go.
Can I ask where that stemmed from? Like when where did you pull from?
You know,
originally?
the summer before I graduated, I lived out here because I wanted to check it out because I had friends that were out here that were working already. And
Jobbing
in music,
scene?
yeah,
Okay.
like people like Marianne Jaime and Mike Drost and who else is that? A bunch of Western people, Vance Okrashevsky.
Oh, yeah.
And and so I was just like, well, this would be cool. And I have an aunt and uncle that are out here, and so I spent the summer with them, and I just loved it. It was interesting though because I went to school for jazz. You know, jazz was the major, and when I got away from jazz school for the summer, and I was writing all my stuff, everything that came out was pop music. You know, was pop rock stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was really interesting that like, oh, you take me out of jazz school and and I'm like, oh, right. This is the first music that I listened to, you know, like I went back to the early influences,
Of course,
you know,
yeah.
and so, you know, just looking at the music that I had, you know, by the time I was getting out of college, you know, because prior to, I was like, oh, I want to be the next Kurt Elling. I want to come to Chicago and sing jazz. And Kurt Elling was my guy, you know, and,
Did you ever hear that phrase? Somebody told me, like, what is it? Oh man, I might get this wrong about jazz musicians and like pop musicians or whatever. Like, jazz.
Well, what
pop
do you-
musicians play 3 chords for 1,000 people. Jazz musicians play 1,000 chords for
3
5 people.
I was gonna say, I like that. I thought I thought you were gonna go to the joke. You know, what do you do when you have a jazz musician on your porch?
What?
You pay him for the pizza.
Oh no.
I mean, you could put any musician in there, frankly.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
But yeah, so it.
Oh man, so you've had this huge. I mean, you had this wealth of knowledge, but then you
know,
knew
like the
where
harmony
you had
thing.
to go with it.
Yeah, and so that
Cool.
that certainly informed kind of what I was writing, but it was still kind of going in more of a, you know, and I think the Toto guys are kind of like that, like these hugely knowledgeable musicians who elected to make pop rock stuff.
Was it hard to make that? Like, did you find that your first work was still leaning kind of jazz heavy, or were you able to kind of quickly identify where you wanted to go and what market you had to go after and kind of write accordingly?
You know, the original, I mean, really, I am not, I don't consider myself, you know, relative to people that I know to be like a super prolific writer. And so there wasn't like there was gobs and gobs of material, but it was like, well, you know, this is loosely what this stuff sounds like. And so this is, I think, where I want to go with it. And so I put a group together, and it was kind of a logistically impossible group because it was my buddy Levi Britton, who was my roommate, but then the other 3 guys were all still at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, which is like 2.5 hours east, plus, you know, you lose an hour. And so it was like, put this group together, and we did a show in Chicago and at Beat Kitchen, and it went well. You know, but it was, and it went well enough that they were like, "Hey, why don't you come back?" And so
These are primarily originals, or
it was virtually, I think it might have been entirely originals.
Okay,
like I
cool.
had like, you know, 8 or 9 originals. We played them all.
And what were at the time? What pieces were you
instrumentation? So it was me just singing and Levi playing guitar, singing some backups. Like maybe we had him sing lead on one tune or something.
All right.
And then bass, drums, and keys.
Cool.
And, you know, so I booked the next gig, and my buddy John, the drummer, he's like, man, sorry, I can't do it. It's like, of course he can't do it. He lives in Spring Lake, you know, which is like
Yeah.
I should have seen this coming, right? Well, so Levi, in his infinite wisdom on many things, he's like, well, I know you've been doing, I know you went to school with Danny Myers, and you guys have done some stuff together. Well, Danny and I have been
You
doing
went to school
some
with Dan
stuff.
Myers?
Yeah, so Danny was in Gold Company as well.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. I think
so-
somebody from my company just like picked him up and dragged him to like overseas for a random gig too.
Oh, well, you know what? Sorry. He does Lieutenant Dan Band.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's in that. He's been in that for a long time.
Okay.
But so Danny and I go back to, you know, we started at Western the same time.
Sure.
We've known each other since we were 18.
So are you now? And I'm sorry I cut in there, but are we getting to the djembe? Is that where
so
this is going?
So here's the interesting thing. So
Okay.
so I suppose 2001 is a really interesting year on a lot of fronts for me because I said to myself, okay, I'm going to go into the studio at Western and record some of this original material and then start playing. And toward the end of 2000, you know, I just moved out to Chicago, and and I'm like, doing all the things that I know to do as far as I've called various jobbing band, my friend Marianne was like, oh, call this jobbing band leader and this jobbing band leader. So I start doing a little bit of that. I got into this random stage production that it was like a play, but they had like a Greek chorus, as it were, singing these tunes, mostly from the 60s and 70s, like a cappella in between parts of the action.
Oh.
And so I was in that, and I was doing this caroling thing. So there's all this stuff going on in December. And I remember very vividly, I went with my roommate Levi. We went to go see Kurt Elling at the Green Mill. And it was, my family had come to Chicago for Christmas that year because I was in this show. I couldn't come home. It's the first time that ever happened in my life. But so they leave. I go with Levi to go see Kurt Elling with his regular Wednesday night set. And I remember thinking to myself on the way home, or like earlier that night, like, man, once January hits, there's not going to be any caroling anymore. That show's going to be over. It's just going to be me working at the record store. There's not going to be a lot of weddings. It's like, man, it's going to be kind of a drag, And I checked my little... I'm imagining, I can remember my old phone, it was about this big, and which, the audience can't see that. It was about 6 inches big.
All right.
And it had the little bendy antenna, and I have a voicemail. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And it's like from an unrecognized number. It was my director from college, Steve Zagri, and he was calling from Namur, Belgium.
Wow.
Where he was doing a year of sabbatical, and he was directing this group called the World Youth Choir, which, we think youth choir, we think little kids. In Europe, youth choir is like 18 to 26.
Okay.
And so this was the first time the World Youth Choir had ever had a jazz director, and so they had like kind of a smaller session, so like 32 singers, and it's kind of this unbelievable organization, singers from all over the world, and for their winter sessions, it would be like December... everybody would start arriving on December 26th. And, but from the four corners of the earth. So you can imagine the logistics here. It's like crazy.
Oh, wow.
Well, so everybody's kind of getting in, they're checking in, and they're like, okay, everybody's here except for this one member of the bass section, this guy from Canada. Well, they call, and they're like, and they find out the guy's sick and he's not going to be able to come. Well, their funding is a little bit predicated upon having 32. So here's this phone message from Steve Zagri saying, hey, we need to fill this bass slot. I'm here in Belgium. Are you interested in this? And can you do it? And I'm like, it could. And I was just thinking about how much January was going to be lame.
Were you a bass singer ever in
choir?
Parts? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Because if given the opportunity,
I did not know this. I've only known you as kind of baritone tenor guy.
Yes, I have many tendencies.
Good for you.
I have some tendencies you don't know about, Robby.
Good for you.
But so. And it was basically to sing jazz stuff, kind of jazz ensemble stuff in Belgium, Luxembourg, and then randomly, because they've been trying really hard for years to get to bring the choir to Africa, and it just happened to work out. So it was going to be Belgium, Luxembourg, and South Africa.
That sounds a little more interesting than just a record store. That sounds like...
Right. And so fortunately my boss, Rick Lawrence at Coconuts, is a super cool guy, and he's like, yeah, man, go do it. And so on New Year's Eve, 2000, I did this last show of that stage production. Uh-huh. And, and of course it was New Year's Eve, so they had like Flo and Eddie from the Turtles as like special guests. Yeah. It was just a really random thing. But so 2 a.m., show's over, I get in a cab and go to Midway, fly to New York, 5 a.m., and it was interesting because it was 2001, right? Okay. January 1, 2001. It was a really clear morning, and flew into LaGuardia, and had beautiful, clear skies. And I took all these pictures of the World Trade Center. It's 2001.
Oh, dude.
I still have those pictures. Wow. And it's like, thinking back, it just gives me chills every time I think about it. But so then... I think I might have connected then in Atlanta and then flew straight to Brussels. Got off the plane at 9 a.m. They had somebody there to meet me. First rehearsal, 9:30 a.m., January 2nd. And rehearsed all day. It was fine. No jet lag, no nothing. Got to the last rehearsal that night. and I became aware that I was falling asleep while singing. But what was great is I would continue singing.
Well, there's a bass rumble that can match a snore. You can kind of transfer a snore into a note.
I mean, you can imagine how disorienting it was. Like, yeah, right. It's a really nice sound, you know. It doesn't work so well when it's like a tempo is like 165.
He sounds great, but is that drool? Is he drooling right now?
Is that a pedal? Is that a pedal tone down there? But it was like, because I would wake back up and realize that I had been singing.
This is weird.
I had been singing.
Oh, that's crazy.
But I don't remember what I was singing.
Fair enough.
Wow. So all of that is to say, an amazing experience with these amazing people.
How long was that whole run?
That was, I think it was at least like 2 weeks.
Oh,
and went down to South Africa and a lot of these people are still
amazing.
Dear friends. But what happened, all this happened really quickly. I'm like, well, what? Hey, I'm going to Africa for the first time. What do you bring back from Africa?
Kids, this is what happens, by the way, when you prepare yourself, and not only you can't just be talented, but you do the work, you hone your craft, and all that good stuff. And if you're a good dude, Derek's a good dude. And obviously things happen, you get calls like that because of who and what you are, and that's a tribute to you, man.
Some of the most successful people I know are some of the nicest people.
Yeah, it's
true. And it's not an accident. Not necessarily throwing myself into that mix, but it's true. Some of the nicest people I know, like myself.
I happen to be the nicest person I know.
That sounded arrogant. I said, well, gosh, what would be something, indigenous and cool to bring back from my first trip to Africa?
Oh, cool.
And I thought, well, they make amazing, right? Exactly. I brought a tribe, actually, an entire tribe. You wouldn't believe it. They all fit in my carry-on luggage.
Just 20 strong, and it wasn't a big tribe. Cool, man.
It was a relatively relatively empty flight.
Didn't like the cold weather, but surprisingly enough, really liked hot oatmeal. We don't know why, but they enjoyed the oatmeal
and nothing else. But so I decided, they make amazing drums here. Why don't I buy a drum?
No way.
And
this is a true origin story happening here.
We are actually coming back to where we started,
beautiful.
Believe it or not.
Oh, man.
And so my buddy John, who was the drummer from this band that, this logistically impossible band I was telling you about, he was like...
Down the line fans, hold on to your panties right now. This is okay.
Because all down the line fans wear panties, including me. But so I was like, John, can you help me find a drum that's legit? Because we went into this mall in Cape Town, I think.
Okay.
And there was this African specialty store, which wasn't a music store,
right.
But they just had stuff that was particularly African, like rugs and woven, whatever.
Sure.
And so there were a handful of drums. And we tried out a bunch of them, and he's like, man, this one's legit. And so I bought it, and I had it shipped. Did I have it shipped? I think I had it shipped. They packed it really, really well,
okay.
I remember. And, but real goat skin on the top, and wood from real African trees, and a legit drum. And I thought to myself, you know what? At a minimum, this is going to be a really awesome place for me to put my remote control. I didn't play drums. I vocal major. I played keys.
Sure.
Never played drums before. And so we get, fast forward. I, record some of my music for this band that I'm trying, and then we have that gig, and they offer us the second gig. Can't do it, and so Levi's like, hey, I'm doing stuff with Danny. I know you've done stuff with Danny. Why don't we, just for the sake of this one gig, how about the three of us get together? We can do some of Danny's tunes. We can do some of your tunes. You can play that African hand drum.
Nice.
And we'll just, because I was like, man, what are we going to do for this gig? We don't have a drummer. Having not a lot of time, we came up with the ineffectual name of the Britton Fawcett Myers Project. Not a good name, folks. Just way too many words and nothing that's particularly
sounds
interesting.
Sounds like a plumbing supply store, actually.
Yeah. We were, I think
only for Britton faucets.
I was Luigi,
faucets.
Yeah. But so, wait a minute. So would Dan then be Wario and then Levi be Mario?
Well, there you go.
Or maybe Levi was Louis. I don't know. We'll get back to that. But so we did that gig, and it went over like super well. And one of the guys who was in the audience was this guy named Dave Rothkopf, and he's a bass player and guitar player and songwriter, and he's friends with Danny. And Dan was like, hey, I was thinking about maybe, because we decided to do another gig. And he's like, I was thinking about maybe bringing in Dave, because he, put some bass in there, might fill things out musically. I'm like, cool. We were still a band without a name, right? So we were the Britton Fawcett Myers Project with special guest Dave Rothkopf.
Oh, that's catchy. That's catchy. It's very, very catchy.
That is the opposite.
Yeah,
that's catchy. That was a beautiful response. That, by the way, for those listening, they couldn't have had a better deadpan response from Robby Celestin right there. This man is a professional. He knows what he's doing.
He doesn't remember his own origin story. No, but besides that,
but boy, can he deliver a deadpan line! I'll tell you what. So we're like, okay, we do not have a usable name because we did this gig, and so it was an interesting thing. You talk about people building bands and what helps a band take off.
Yeah.
Danny and I, we knew all the same people. We went to the same school, and all our friends were musicians, and so they might come to our gig, but they probably had gigs of their own.
Sure.
So it was like that wasn't going to be something like our social scenes for Danny and me weren't going to build our band. Levi is one of these guys that meets 8 people a day, and they all love him immediately. So a bunch of people that love Levi were coming to the show, and then Dave was working at an ad agency called Tatham. Tatham, Euro RSCG Tatham, I think, at the time. I think it's been molded like 18 times since. Okay. But, taking on different forms and names. But he worked at this ad agency where everybody loved him. And so they came to the show. So between Levi and Dave, all of a sudden, we had an audience.
What? So that quickly?
Well, at least it was like,
you had something to build on.
Yeah, as soloists, maybe we would have had like 10 people, but together it was something like 40 or 50, like by that third show. And so it was like
any indie artist starting out, 40 and 50 is a great number.
And Dave, to his, he had been in this other really successful band called The Good.
Okay.
Late 90s, early 2000s. Done a lot of cool performing opportunities, some touring, and so it wasn't like he was an unknown musical entity in the way that Danny and I were,
sure,
and Levi. So that helped as well. So then we're like, okay, this has legs. We should do more of this, but we need a far more serviceable name. Well, so we're all trying to come up with stuff, and I'm working at Coconuts at a record store. If any of you have ever worked at record stores, and this might speak to you, there's music constantly. The second you walk in the door, there's music playing, and so after a while, it's all just a wash. And the only stuff that sticks with you is the stuff that's really, really, really good and the stuff that's miserably bad, And downstairs is pop rock, R&B, hip hop. Upstairs is all the more niche stuff, folk, classical, world music, jazz, all of that stuff, blues. And so a lot of times more desirable depending upon what was on the, corporate CD that month, So somebody had put on this Alligator Records blues compilation.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which, great. I'm loving it. And the song comes on, and it's this woman singing, and she's really bad. Okay. Miserably. Nice. I'm going around doing my thing on the floor and just wincing every 45 seconds.
It's a little known fact that there's a small portion of alligator artists that were actually attacked by alligators in the studio, yeah, and it greatly affected their vocal performance.
I gotta say, I thought about sicking an alligator on this. It was just bad, And at a certain point, this woman did something, and I'm going to do my best impersonation of it now.
Oh, please.
But it's pretty terrible. I may be giving it a little too much credit, but it's like. Down the line. Right. And I was like, oh. But then I was like, wait a minute. Down the line. I wonder if anybody's ever called a band that. And so to this day, I'm very thankful to this miserable singer, because if she hadn't have been as terrible as she was, I wouldn't have paid attention.
She was your catalyst.
She was my catalyst.
Name and catalyst.
Yes.
But you don't remember her name. You don't know the artist.
No idea. But what's funny is I suspect there aren't that many Alligator Records box sets out there.
No, probably not.
And
No.
I should make it a mission to find out who it
think
is,
you
and then
should.
write her a letter and say, hey, you know what? Thanks to your performance, we found our name. So
We're going to make
we are
the
forever
1
grateful.
second pause. Just 1 second. Here we go. There was the pause, and I blinked to the audience, and like 7 strong minutes of me getting another cup of coffee and you grabbing another sparkling coconut drink.
What are you talking about, man? I'm drinking whiskey and Coke.
Oh, right.
I realize it's 1 p.m,
Coke.
but that's
Coconut.
I'm that. Yeah,
water. Yeah, I'm just
True story.
I'm hopped up on coconut water. I've been a fan of the coconut water lately.
Anyway, it's not particularly rock and roll, but it is what we're consuming.
Is it?
What
Well,
can I say?
I'm not gonna lie. I put Irish cream in my coffee. I won't say a name because eventually someone's gonna just sponsor and send me Irish cream by the shipment.
What exactly is the problem with that scenario?
There's no problem with that. You are
Yes,
correct, sir.
yes.
So we have the
This
drum.
is the Robby Show, sponsored by Bailey's.
We have the drum.
Yes.
We have the name.
Yes.
Bam. Now what? What happens?
So we go into the studio
Down the line. Great name.
and it just kind of it's kind of lit everybody up, and we started playing some shows. We kind of
Were
went.
you guys
from,
writing collectively, or was somebody just, hey, here's my tune, and then everybody would kind of chime in and do a
It was
little...
mostly that. It was
Yeah.
mostly like, we would write songs, bring it to the band, and then kind of arrange it together. Because we had this wonky, like I was playing djembe. We had electric bass. A lot of times in these acoustic groups, you have acoustic bass. That's not what Dave played. So it was djembe and electric. So here's this ancient tribal instrument and an electric bass, and then we had Danny, who's kind of a Swiss Army knife, playing mandolin, electric violin, and harmonica, and then Levi playing acoustic guitar, and Dave sometimes playing acoustic guitar.
You handed me a CD when we worked together. I had no idea what I was going to hear, and I mean, for anybody who is just learning about Derek now and down the line, just get their music. It's so good. The voices are so amazing, and the good thing is, you guys managed to do that thing, that kind of Sarah Smile thing, where like it's accessible. But if you really listen, there's some stuff going on. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about it. Those are my favorite types of tunes. I like it all, but that kind of stuff. And I just thought the harmonies just blew me away. The voices, man, you guys all had such amazing voices. Everybody had a great voice.
I like that he's talking in the past tense.
Yeah.
You guys all had such amazing voices. It's such a shame what happened to you,
I'm
Derek.
really sad about what's going on now. It's just too bad.
I mean, now it's kind of a sad
now
sack,
it's just,
but whatever.
Now
But back
it's just,
then,
now,
man, 2006, it was really happening.
2006
for him,
was going on. Now it's just like, just cut the line is the new.
Cut the line.
Not down the
Looks
line.
like he
Cut the line.
ran
Let it
out
go.
of
Let him
time.
go. Throw
Whoa,
him back.
whoa.
Throw him back.
And we're back at Toto.
But I loved the sound and everything. So it's just it's a cool thing. And now on the CD though, you guys had drums and stuff going on. Well, when I saw you live once or twice, and it was the djembe thing happening. So did you guys ever perform with the drums, or did you guys?
No,
you guys
never.
didn't need it.
No, we always were 4 dudes across the front.
And then how did that? So what you had like the bass, the fan base, through all the different areas you guys kind of pulled from socially. But then what got you to the point where all of a sudden because you guys were on the move. When I met you, you were like touring. How did that happen?
Well, we got every city has their kind of club hierarchy, right? You have like kind of what I like to call C rooms that like people play them, but they probably shouldn't.
Okay.
Really like very local and like just not good places to play. You have B rooms that are pretty local, but are also quite good places to play. And then you have A rooms that they have the best locals in them, or at least the most successful, and a lot of national touring acts. And so it's like we started Beat Kitchen, which is really great. Always been a great B. Sometimes leaning in the direction of A room in Chicago, which is a lovely place to play. And we kind of started filling that, and we thought it would be a good move for us to start playing Elbow Room.
What do you think? Where the fans that you started to pick up that were outside of your social circle? Do you think that was just becoming like a word of mouth with your social circle, or did you guys do anything else to promote to get those people?
It wasn't, because the thing is, we weren't really doing a heavy email list thing at that point. Facebook was not what was not.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
there was no Facebook, and so and we didn't. I don't even think MySpace was a thing at that point.
Okay,
which is interesting to think about. But yeah, so it was really a lot of it was our friends telling their friends and them coming and them being into it. And I remember it just kind of felt like it kind of webbed out that way. And I think a lot of successful bands, will have similar stories where it's just like people really felt like they had stumbled upon something and they wanted to tell people about it.
That's awesome.
And so we moved over to Elbow Room. We ended up we recorded a record, released the record at Elbow Room, a really great show. Our parents all came in from across the country, which was really fun and fun for them to see us up there with a packed house. And gradually, like as we felt like every time we'd play a show that we'd sell about 100 tickets at kind of on average, we felt like it's legit for us to to start touring a little bit. And so we had an opportunity to play in Wisconsin, opportunity to play in Michigan, and kind of started building those up a little bit. And then the Chicago, what we were doing in Chicago kept picking up steam. I remember we had one like 6-month period where we played with, Katie Todd?
I know the name.
Yeah, a great singer-songwriter from here. And
I think I know the name because I remember seeing you linked with her for a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
and so it was like a 6-month period where we played with her at Martyrs, Shuba's, Double Door, and then a show at Metro together.
How close together were those shows?
Probably like 2 months apart, something like that.
And for any of the, those are all Chicago spots, folks.
And great A rooms in town,
Yeah.
And so you just felt like this real upward trajectory, and and so that was. And around then we were recording a second record, and we were playing that material a lot prior to.
And you were you able to track like, there are sales in Colorado, or was there a way to do that at that time?
I mean,
at the indie level, or not
really? I mean,
because you guys ended up. I mean, like when you say you went up to Wisconsin, when you say you went to Michigan, like that's still in this circle, and I would imagine maybe you guys still had some ties in Michigan, But when you first go to were you in Colorado or maybe Nashville or somewhere? Did you guys move out of that circle as well for part of your run?
Oh yeah. Well,
so when you're doing that, how did you know to all right, we're going here?
Well, it was. Nashville. We kind of just felt like based on. Kind of the way our music sounded, that people would probably be interested in it in Nashville. And so at the time, our manager is a dear friend, Kirk Bangstad. He was a Harvard guy, actually, and he tried...
so not very bright. He was.
Yeah, right. Not very bright, not successful. And he had some connections, that people that had settled in Nashville. And so, because we just decided we needed to go down there. We need to, if any of you have ever watched the TV show Nashville, they talk about the Bluebird, right? And we're like, okay, we got to play there. That's where Garth Brooks got discovered. That's where a lot, it has such an amazing lineage. We got to go there. And so we went down there and we played some shows. And again, it was one of those things where, oh man, this is something, And so started making more regular trips down there. We started going out to New York because Dave is from Long Island and had a bunch of friends out there, and that was successful. And we're like, well, if we're going to go out to New York, we should go out to Boston. And we had some friends that, so it was like it kind of expanded relatively organically. And, and there'd be times, certainly a lot of times, where we we should play here and try to play here, and it wouldn't work, or just I remember we played St. Louis. We had a really hard time getting anywhere in St. Louis. We had this great venue that we'd play at, and we'd play these shows that we really loved to 6 people.
Yeah.
But we would also talk about gosh, these shows are awesome because we were so not concerned with the audience because there wasn't one.
That is great. That's the best show, though.
So we were so into just playing, and throwing kind of musical fireballs at each other that it just felt really electric.
Now, has that made its way to just about every show? Because people who see me, if I'm not doing an unplugged thing, I'm jumping and dancing and all that stuff. And a lot of people have asked, oh, well, you're just playing off the crowd, and I don't want anyone put off by this who sees me, but I really don't. I have so much fun with the craft and with being on stage, and my line of thought is you're having a party on that stage, and everyone else is invited if they want to be a part of it. And if they're not a part of it, or if nobody's in the room, you're still having a party. So then you're doing almost the same show in front of 5 people as you are in front of 500 people. And naturally there's still going to be a little bit of an energetic change when you have that many people in front of you and all that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't know. I've made it a habit of doing pretty much the same show or the same energy, And most importantly, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like, well, then when you have 1,000 people in front of you, it's not like you have to push the envelope like you're conditioned already.
Right.
This is the only show you know how to do. What had you get into solo land? Where was the change? Like when did down the line decide, okay, we've had the run, let's take a break now?
We had this amazing 2010 where we put out a record that we recorded in Nashville, and we recorded with Chad Cromwell on drums, who's Neil Young's drummer.
Nice.
We had this gentleman whose name actually is escaping me right now, play some keys, who's the music director of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, just kind of a little bit of beat.
So this is not pointing to walking away to me right now.
Right, so this is 2010, and one of our songs got licensed for a Ford commercial, which was cool. It wasn't a national thing, but it was several different places around the country, and we started touring, and it was interesting because we hadn't toured in a while, and a lot had changed. Like when we started touring, we would sell lots of CDs, and that was like a big thing, and $10 a pop.
Sure.
And this album was an EP, and so it was $5 a pop, and people weren't buying as many CDs, and the economy had just tanked. By the way, it was 2010, and full disclosure here, these are three of my best friends. These guys, I just got married in January. They all stood up in the wedding.
Beautiful.
We've all been standing up in each other's weddings here. But it was one of those things where, so the Beatles, perhaps you've heard of them. They,
You're
first
out of Nashville, right?
Out of Nashville.
Small country.
Nashville, just outside of Edinburgh. And they... that first album that came out in England, Please Please Me, 1963. You can say 1962 is when Love Me Do came out. They broke up in 1969. So, you can say roughly 6 or 7 years. Down the Line started in 2001, and the last show that we've played together is 2011.
Okay.
So it was one of those things where it's like we have been around for longer than the Beatles.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet,
Yeah.
And and we just, I think, I can't speak for the other guys, but I think we're all, well, I will speak for the other guys. I think we're all pretty thrilled with what we were able to do. And, and
you thrilled a lot of people along the way, by the way.
And it was, and I think there's a sense of other itches to scratch, and I think a lot of people in bands feel that ultimately, even bands that are really successful,
Absolutely.
And, so
it's funny. Do you attribute, like, oh, it's not selling quite as many? Do you attribute that to just, well, obviously technology changed everything, but then also if you stop, when we're in the indie world, if you stop touring for a bit, sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind, and that's tricky too.
Yeah, well, because we really, we hadn't toured for a little while because we had been kind of getting things together in Nashville. Like we ended up with some management down there, and there was a lot of kind of back and forth, going there back and forth to do what we were doing and to set up our album project. But that required all of our attention, so we weren't touring a ton.
Who was the? I mean, was there a promotional brain behind that? Because again, you guys started out with, okay, we had, between all of us, we have this social circle, and we have a little bit of it here, a little bit of it there. But then obviously the music and the show had to speak for itself, and that's how that grew. But was there somebody else who was kind of pushing things from a marketing standpoint to help that expand as well, or was it just this organic thing that just
not a
kind
ton.
of fell in the right place for
and
you?
In retrospect, it's interesting because I think that hindsight is 20/20. I suspect that it could have been capitalized upon more than it, like we just we were not we weren't people that were, Luddites. Like, it wasn't like we didn't know what technology was, but, they're just our friends in Tally Hall became MySpace superstars. But before people were using bots, they just honestly exploded legitimately on MySpace. And that we were never that kind of band. I mean, our music was kind of a throwback in the first place, but, I think now, nowadays, when anybody talks about launching anything, it's about using data. And I know, in this Kickstarter campaign, working with, I was telling you about my friend Emily, okay, what are the things that have worked and what are the things that have, it's like,
so let's get
there's so much data.
Let's let the
there's
listeners
so much
know.
that you can refer to.
Let's let the listeners know what's happening here, because then, young Mr. Fawcett went in to do, the solo thing. And when you did, you decided to go Kickstarter, which a lot of artists are either thinking about or attempting, and I know one big drawback that people don't, or surprise that I've been hearing from inexperienced artists is that, do you have to pay taxes on this and all that?
Right.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
And then of course the tricky thing is if you don't hit the number, you don't get the money, correct?
That's right.
So you have to be very intelligent, and you hit the number, and you hit a pretty decent chunk of change there. Yours was not. You did not ask for $200. You did not ask for $5,000. Yours was up.
It was
$34,000.
Well, and I should explain
now
why.
You did have a following to build from, but then you, what did you do? Because it worked. Kudos to you.
Because it was. Because I said to myself, I'm like, I had put out an EP, 5-song EP, and there was enough, what I felt like was enough interest in it that would justify another recording.
And when you saw that interest, was that a lot of the down the line fans? Were you able to pull from that a lot?
Some of them, but it's it's an interesting thing. Like in Down the Line, I played djembe and I sang. I sang lead on a bunch of tunes, but not, I wouldn't say a plurality of them. It was pretty evenly distributed, but it's.
So where did the Derek Fawcett fan base come from?
Well, this is the thing. It's kind of its own. It's kind of its own animal.
Okay.
Hi fans, I just called you an animal, a collective animal, no less. But yeah, it's because. There's certainly elements of the music that are shared, but essentially now it's me on the keys and with a more traditional musical, kind of makeup. And, it's like, so you'll hear some overlap, but it's a different music, So it's like how, anybody that goes solo from a band, it just like, Don Henley goes solo and there's no harmony. Like there's a much less harmony. And he does it on purpose because he's like, hey, I am not the Eagles, and not that I'm putting myself in that same, but just for a reference that people can hold on to here. But like, so it's, if you're somebody who likes Down the Line and you're wanting to hear music that does X, Y, and Z, well, my music, even if you like me personally, isn't going to do those same things.
Sure,
so it's like,
sure.
it's not a gimme that anybody that loves Down the Line is going to love my solo music.
So let me ask you
but there
this.
are a lot of people that do,
When you're talking about the change in vibe, because I've heard the Down the Line stuff, I have to listen to your stuff and hearing what people say, like what brought about this different tone? Was it just you felt like going in a different direction, from a tone and from a emotional standpoint, or was there stuff you're pulling from, and this is what I'm writing?
Yeah, I mean it. Like I say, I don't consider myself to be a prolific songwriter, and in fact, songwriting is a harsh mistress for me. It's like
brilliant thing you just did, by the way, the YouTube video. this guy, you're YouTube savvy, and I think people have to do that, and you're doing it. And somebody told me about this, and so I've been doing this for the last year as well. The presence, if you can do it on everything, Twitter, YouTube. Somebody was saying, release a YouTube video every week, which I cannot. I just don't. It's
hard,
but putting that stamp out there, it really works. And then you did this thing. Derek did this awesome thing. He just reached out to songwriters, or not. You just reached out. He sang a chorus. And I think did you actually? No, you didn't play chords for a verse. Did you for verse and pre? I couldn't remember.
Not for the verse.
And then you just said, "Here's the chorus. All right, send me the songs. I sent you a couple lyrics, and I don't know how many did you get from that. How many responses?
6 or 7.
So
I
it's
think.
great, and then he basically put it all together. Now, was that something that just hit you like, okay, this is going to be a fun promotional tool? Like, is that something you decided?
Yeah, so
it's a great idea.
What Robby's talking about here is I had this chorus of this song.
Yeah,
because one of the things that particularly as I'm now a newer entity to most people's ears is like, okay, interaction. Like have people engage with me as a musician as much as possible, because then they feel like they own a part of it, in the same sense that this is why people go to shows, this is why people buy merchandise. They want, I think we broadly, and myself included, like we want to be a part of something, like that's one of the reasons that we love art and that we love music and because it ends up saying something about us, like, hey, I love so-and-so. That immediately speaks, it says something, and what it actually says, it depends on who's listening, but it says something about who you are, and so I thought to myself, I'm like, I've released this album, which we will get back to, I promise, but wanted to have something to kind of engage people. And I had, any songwriter, you got fragments that are just kind of floating around. I had this chorus that I really liked, but I was just never able to find a verse and a bridge, never able to find the remaining parts to finish the song. I'm like, you know what? I could either let this thing continue to sit here and do nothing, or I could try to, hey, why don't I work with some other writer and we can finish this in somebody's living room, or I could make a big public thing of it and invite people to participate. And so I posted, like Robby said, I posted it to a little YouTube video of my Facebook page saying, hey, here's this chorus. Want to write the rest of it with me? And so I played the chorus and had people from across the country kind of write in with, hey, here's what I'm hearing, and here's what, and Robby, to his credit, was the most thorough because he sent along actual musical clips, and so what I ended up having was this great little musical challenge whereby here were, I think it was either 5, it might have been as few as 5, but I think it was 6.
I thought you said 6.
Yeah.
Can you see yourself doing this again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's been a blast. But I had, input from 6 people that was all over the map, and one thing that I'm going to do next time is definitely share that material, because I was a friend was like, oh, I would have loved to see what everybody else, so I'm definitely doing that next time.
That's
but
kind of
cool. And people had really different ideas of where the song was going to go. Robby was like creating new words in the English language, and like, my friend Christine had this very sweet story, that was a lot sweeter than the one that was in my head. I'm just like, oh, you're such a sweet person. Maybe I'm not as sweet as you are, And so to somehow try to weave it all together to have it be a comprehensible song. Well, and I ultimately determined that like the best that I could probably do was just to specifically take words from what people sent and just make a point to use that, so that the person in that sent it was like, aha, I included that word, so then it was theirs,
That's smart.
And it's like, that's the only, so it ended up becoming this cool little story, and the song is called No Chance. And I haven't recorded it other than for a YouTube video so far.
Check that out, folks.
I've got some shows this. I've got a show this month, and I've got a show in Ann Arbor in the summer, the Ann Arbor Summer Festival.
Cool.
And I think I'll probably try to work that into the live set there. But
when you do your show now, is it purely solo, or do you have some players with you?
Most of the time. I did a couple so I had a 15 or so date tour last fall to support the release of the record. And the vast majority of those shows were just
Let's
me
do a
with the
thing,
piano.
man. I want to drag you out at Reggie's with me or something.
Dude, drag me out.
Yeah?
Drag me out. Let's do it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I've been off the clock for like almost like 8 months or so, so I'm like itching now.
Oh, yeah.
And I always like to have a different person on the bill. With me. Like,
let's
that
do
would be
it,
fun.
brother.
All right,
Let's do it.
Well, I think it was a great idea, man. And just kudos to you for just going in the direction, doing your thing, getting the CD done, And then here's something else I'm curious about, because this kind of the middle class of entertainment, which I love focusing on. I love these stories. We all do what we do, and you also work at Columbia College.
That's right.
And so what? It's voice instructor, or what are you?
Yeah, so I'm an adjunct member of the faculty.
Okay.
And
what do you teach primarily?
So
in a nutshell, what is your?
I don't do any teaching in a nutshell, actually.
All right.
To be very uncomfortable. It's kind of hot in there.
Don't knock it till you try it. That's all I'm going to say. Don't knock it till you try it.
I think if I knocked it, I might injure the shell. But so they brought me on back in 2006 as a private voice instructor, and specifically they're interested.
So that was one-on-one at the time? Okay.
Mm-hmm. They're particularly interested in the fact that I was in this band down the line, but I was also already teaching elsewhere, they were starting this new program where you could study contemporary music, which was really only like half a dozen schools across the country, and not that many in the entire world where you can get a degree in contemporary music, and Columbia is one of them.
Nice.
And so just private teaching for a long time, and then within the past couple of years, I've started directing a couple ensembles, including this past year, pretty kind of funny, this country music ensemble, which has been a real blast.
So how does that, what does the class entail then? What are you doing?
Country music ensemble? So I'm the director of this group, and we've got,
how big
drummer.
is the class?
So this semester, I think last semester we had 8, this semester we have 6.
Okay.
And
it requires, we need a drummer, like are there certain requirements because you have to fill certain chairs?
Yeah, because we're trying to have, bass, drums, guitar for sure, and then some singers. And
you're getting them to are you training them to mesh as a band and then collaborate, like original material as well? Or no, mainly it's...
Just covers.
Okay.
Just covers, yeah. But
it's so important, though, because, oh, man, the world of jazz or of show choir or of classical, throw a rock, you're going to hit a school for that, But then... There's a great percentage.
But don't throw a rock because you're going to break something.
Well,
there might be kids listening,
Nerf
Robby.
Football, kids. Throw a Nerf football, and you're going to hit a jazz or classical.
And when you throw it, say, hey, look out.
You were so safe. I like that. Look out.
It's easy to get hurt.
Wow, what the hell?
You might do bad things.
That was my terrible classical warm-up impression.
That was a very
Yes.
Yes.
Anyway.
If anybody was falling asleep, they're awake now.
Right after this podcast, there's just going to be a stream of rocks and Nerf balls being thrown.
No pun intended. Hear what he did? He said stream. You guys get that? He'll be here all day. No, really. We're at his house.
So I think it's so important because you walk out of it being a classically trained musician or singer or whatever, and there's a lot of work to be had in the contemporary world. And for a while, in the world that I kind of live in band world, to me the most dangerous people are the ones who are formally trained, but then spent their time in the dingy bars singing, because I can hear it. Like I can identify somebody who has only gone the bar scene with zero training,
right?
Because then you just hear these common mistakes, and there's just the phrase, like it's weird. But then when you hear somebody who's overly trained, and again, the contemporary training isn't necessarily out there, so you can kind of living on a prayer, like whoa, no, you can. I think the most dangerous people are the ones who toggle both lines.
I'm pretty sure that was the Michael McDonald version.
That
of
living on a prayer.
Have we talked about the Michael McBlank?
Who's Michael McBlank?
So
McBlank.
All right, so we're really going to divert here. So
all right.
This is a game started playing years ago, and it's called Michael McBlank. And basically, somebody names an artist, and then the other person needs to sing one of that artist's songs in the style of Michael McDonald.
Get out. What?
And it's a really great game, and my one of my best friends, Tim Fitzgerald, makes me do it all the time.
I love Tim.
So for example, Michael McJovey, right? Oh, we're halfway there. Oh, living on a prayer. You know, and you can do it all day. You know, Michael McJackson.
Michael McJackson.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. Said, oh my, but what do you mean? Billie Jean is not my lover. You know,
wow.
It's stupid human tricks, folks.
Not bad. Michael McBlank.
Yeah, it's a fun game.
Play that at home, folks. Work on it now.
So yeah, here we go. And I would
Michael
imagine
McMC. I like big butts and I cannot lie.
Nice.
You other brothers, because he'd have to be melodic.
Yeah, right. Well, let's play this game a little bit. How about Michael? Here we go. Michael McJourney.
McJourney.
Yes. Michael McJourney. Give me some, Robby.
Now I come to you with open arms.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd do that one.
Were you
actually,
hoping
I was like, that's going to be it. Yeah.
Oh man, are there any? Can you do? Here's tricky. Is there a Michael McPerry?
Michael
Katy
McPerry.
Perry.
Oh yeah.
Michael
Sure.
McDonald. That's goofy.
Here we go. Shut up and put your money where your mouth is. That's what you get for waking up in Vegas.
This is the best game ever.
Wait a minute. Baby, you're a firework. Come and show what you're worth.
Who else am I hearing slip in there? A little bit of Cher, maybe? I couldn't tell. Cher is kind of a Michael McDonald.
Michael McSher.
Michael McSher.
Hold on. Stop laughing. Do you believe in life after love?
That sounds like Cher. It's just dawned on me that I've never heard Michael McDonald's or Cher's voice in the same room. I'm sorry. Gypsies, tramps, and thieves. They're the same person. We've just cracked a code here. Oh, man.
And by the way, I assert, though I suspect at their ages now, it's probably not going to happen. But
duet?
If Anita Baker and Michael McDonald ever had a child together, they would produce the most incomprehensible human being to ever walk. They'd be like, nothing at all.
And if it were like a mixed DNA thing, if she just did the artificial, however you input man's fluids into you via test tube, and she put a little bit of Darius Rucker in there, then it'd just be a mess.
Well, then it would just be out of tune. Right?
No, you didn't.
Well, so the funny thing about Darius Rucker, who obviously very, very talented and certainly substantially more popular than I am. But
you know what? There's that one video, Hootie and the Blowfish video, where he's running, catching passes. I think it's and he wasn't very fast. So I think you could say whatever you want about him because I think you can outrun him.
Nice. Well, I was going to say that you can tell the difference between Hootie and the Blowfish and his new stuff because the new stuff is immaculately in tune because we have the technology now, and the old stuff is like always just a little bit,
Now, is that as a vocalist? As a vocalist, is it because it's such a strange stylizing thing? And I hate to give him any rope for that, but I mean, it's so weird. It's such a weird. Sometimes it's almost not even notes from those.
It's a heavy tone.
If I were to think about it, since we're on straight, it's almost like. Do you think there's similarities yet differences? Like I feel like if you kicked Darius Rucker in the balls.
Mm-hmm. I like where this is going already.
Then you would have Dave Matthews. If you kicked him in the balls, put on a little dip, right? Hootie getting kicked in the balls equals Dave Matthews.
Wow.
So, young singers out there,
it's what's
find
so
your
great.
sound.
What's so great is that neither of us are on drugs.
Coconut water.
Neither of us are.
Coconut water, the drug of the future.
Is an intoxicant apparently. And hey, I'm slurring my speech
over
here.
See what I'm
so
saying?
Maybe, yeah.
Well, I'm glad we had this talk. This is a serious vocal talk.
An SVT. Serious vocal. Not to be confused with SWV.
Will you tell these fine folks the name of your CD once again?
Yeah. So the album is called Feel Better.
Now we're talking iTunes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They can find it.
Available at all your favorite online retailers.
Yep.
Google,
you know what?
Music,
people go iTunes, by the way, and then later on listen to him in the other areas because there's certain areas that don't pay the artist as much.
You're a kind man, Robby.
Yeah.
I got to tell you.
Just do it.
Just listen to my music. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you listen to it.
Yeah.
Please. No, but you know what?
Give him some money. He worked hard on it.
It's interesting.
I'll say it. You don't have to say it. I'm saying it.
You're a kind man. But I think about it like this, too, as far as radio, for example. Terrestrial radio has always been free, right?
That's true.
And
but that was born in a day when sales were high.
You're right. But it's like, and everything is morphing, right? At all times. And it always is. And... again, like I was talking about before, one of the things that I want to do as an artist is make music that people can latch onto and get something out of. Yeah. And when I achieve that, I will achieve, whatever success comes along with that. And if that is in 2015 means less monetary success, all right. But it's like if I say to you listeners, listen to the music because I think you'll dig it, no one at this stage of the game is in this thing to get rich,
It's true.
Or at least anybody that's thinking about it.
It's very true, yeah. And let that be another lesson for the people trying to break in, because a lot of my listeners are either people who want to maintain and hear these stories, or the people who want to break in. And hey, if something monetarily happens and your stuff blows up in a way that puts you there, that is great. But I wouldn't go in there thinking dollar signs. I think go in there as an artist, and at least that whether it hits monetarily in a huge way or if it does not, at least you did something from your soul and you can live with it and enjoy it, and other people will enjoy something that is truly a piece of your essence, And I don't know if it sounds a little hippie-esque. Maybe it's the coconut water talking.
Maybe.
But I do think there's a real sort of there's a reality to it, to what's coming from within, and do it that way, because it's not what it used to be. There was a time where even then it was a pinhole of success, But back in the day, if I play this club, someone's going to find the A&R guy is going to find me. Yeah. I mean, the beauty of this day and age, the beauty of it is anybody can be heard. We are no longer living in an age where all of my material is in my car trunk and at the show I'll sell it to you. Now you can be heard all over the place. And hey, I think you're going to be, I had some audiences and sold some stuff, but it wasn't until I completely wrote from the gut and I didn't think twice about what was out there that I actually had my most successful CD. And anything else I was doing up until then, it was still me, but I would sometimes think, okay, well, what's happening now? I better stay in this realm. I better go here, And the first time I wrote for me and just didn't care. And I don't know if you ever did this or if you did this for the new one, but the last thing that I wrote, which was a while back now, was my line of thought was, well, what do I want to hear? What songs do I like? Right. Let me play something, because then you can pop it in, because anything else I do, I pop it in and I'm judging. I'm like, oh, why did I do this? Why did I mix it that way? Where I wanted to throw that away for one project, put it in, and it's not perfect, but the voice prints thing, those are for me. So I don't judge. And I think that's important for people to walk away with, like, man, do you, and then see who follows.
I mean, this will sound a little cliche, but everybody has a story to tell. And some people are better than others at telling it. Yeah. And some people are better at telling other people's stories.
That's true.
Like, really, a lot of the music on my record is me imagining myself, it's totally my voice, I guess you could say, but telling these stories that aren't necessarily biographical.
That's fun, man. Cool.
And it...
Do you decide sometimes, like, this is a fun tale to weave and to tell, and then you've written that?
I think I gotta say, personally, it's easier to write about other people than it is to write about me, because when you write a story about yourself, there's this sense that you need to be bound to the facts, like, oh, well, this happened and then this happened, and when it's a story, it can go whatever way you think is most compelling for the story, and you inevitably end up betraying your own biases and your own kind of history, because you can't not tell a story that way. Like, you only have, the only perspective that you have really is your own. Yeah. And so you're still going to be telling it the way you would tell it, and so it's still yours, but it is unbound. It isn't weighed down by, like, well, like you hear a lot of young songwriters writing things that like, this is exactly what happened to them on, May 15th, 1997.
And more power to them. I think everybody has their way. And
it's great, but it has a governor placed on it, and that limits creativity, right? And if you go for, and it also depends on what you're trying to do. Like I know, I've seen you perform and certainly perform with you, and it's like your thing, like you say, it's like, this is a party, and this is, and there is a universe of musicians that make music like, hey, just enjoy yourself and dance. Just have a great time, and that in and of itself, I think is really hard. Like, how do you write something that is compelling, that makes people want to dance, which like a lot of people really don't want to do, like that is its own thing. And then you have stuff that is designed to be clever and like, maybe even edgy. I think about like, the music of Radiohead and like trying to figure out what the heck those, those lyrics are like a maze. And like, I'll be thinking about the lyrics to Paranoid Android for the rest of my life and having new realizations about what I think it means, And then, there's kind of actual storytelling, that like, I'm going to delve into, and sometimes very specific story, like, beginning, middle, and end. Sometimes it's just a vignette. And, and all of these, you imagine like a gearbox in a car, and each one of these is, you can shift into these different directions, and they all have their own virtues. Like, going into first gear is great for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
and going into reverse is great for A, B, and C. And it's just, I think one of the harder things to do is figure out where you want to be on that gearbox.
I think what's even harder is this kind of, some people end up feeling like they're shackled to a certain way, because I like to sometimes write something a little more introspective, or there's something, if there's a messed up story in my life, I like to pull from it. I actually like to take anything that's tragic and hard and add a little comedic twist to it, and I enhance the story,
So you like laughing at people's pain?
Yeah, well, my own.
You're doing,
I laugh at my own pain.
A Schadenfreude album?
Yeah. But I noticed that I don't know if it's the fact that I just like to change up stylistically what's happening, or maybe I'm just not that good. Who's good enough to stay in one realm for the whole CD? So I tend to like, okay, this one's about me. Oh, this one's just an old school R&B thing about just making love to the one you love. Why not? That's a fun story to tell, And then this
especially
one,
when you get specific.
Especially when you get specific. Drop names and addresses. I remember that one couch on 9th Street. Yeah. But no, I think I've had a good time. I've had a good, my stuff's almost schizophrenic, but not, because I think the thread is the emotion that I give it and my voice. And there's a thread, even though, stylistically, there's, one just, love her, it don't get no better than, but then another one, I'm talking about moving on from your past, the way you thought or the way you, So I think it's important because just like you and I sitting here right now, it's like nobody's going to sit and just talk one way. It's like, well, why not? You can do that musically. You can have that conversation with your audience, and we'll talk about love making. We'll talk about past pain. We'll talk about future smiles. Let's do it all. Why not? And that's the beauty of no rules. But again, now that being said, that's my personal choice. But I think that's nice. It's like I've always hated the fact that sometimes. Not that there aren't artists who can pull this off, because they do. I think there was a vibe to the down the line stuff that had a similar vibe, and it was so brilliantly done, and so it was ear candy. I loved it so much. But I think that it's hard to find that often. Like I think a lot of times you're buying that CD or that album for these two great songs, and then sometimes you get artists that were just trying to duplicate those two great songs. And the whole CD is like, well, I've got 7 terrible reggae songs, but 2 real good ones. So my line of thought is, forget this. I'm going to write a reggae song, a Latin song, a pop, and then try to make those as best as I can, instead of like, I just nailed this R&B tune.
Sure.
Now let me write 8 subpar ones.
Well, right, and it's an interesting thing, because an artist's perception of what they do best might be wrong.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. In this,
we've seen that in the pop world, by the way.
This. I talk about this probably too much, but I think
Let's hear it.
like John Mayer.
Okay.
Okay. I love John Mayer. I think he's a tremendous
extremely
musician,
talented,
and I maintain that his Room for Squares is at least one of the best albums of the 2000s.
I would definitely agree with that.
And
lyrically and musically.
Yeah, and here's this, mostly acoustic guitar driven songwriting stuff that like maybe wasn't super mature, but it wasn't trying to be, and like touching on breaking down double doors. It's
right.
Every high school kid at that moment went, yep, I get it, man. And he never wanted to actually be that guy.
Yeah.
Because the second he wanted to make another album,
and
acoustic guitar was mostly gone.
Yeah.
And I maintain to this day that if he would have made 3 or 4 more albums that were in the same vein as Room for Squares. I mean, obviously he's, Grammy winning, hugely successful as he is, but I feel like he'd be king of the world now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's probably an audience that wanted that too,
Yeah.
and I think, and good for him. I forget whatever he wrote or whatever his other personal things that got him in trouble. Like, good for him, because I think that used to be my personal dream. I used to think, you know what, I'll if I have to be in a certain box for pop stuff. And then you get that level of success, because it's still a business and a lifestyle. If you get to that level, and give me the security from my success, and then allow me to do anything I want to do. The Hall & Oates model, they were filling stadiums and things like that, and they were at their height, and then they just thought, all right, we're walking away. And now those guys, will do the Chicago theater. They'll do the more intimate thing. They'll pack it, and they've never stopped releasing material. But after they cashed their checks and made all their money, everything they've done has been indie, because they're just like, yeah, we're going to do it our way from now on. We want people to buy it, which is brilliant. And I think there's a beauty to that. If you can maintain your style and some semblance of who you are, but at the same time, I don't know if it's necessarily selling out as much as it's paying dues sometimes. Well, and he still identified himself, why Georgia, why? Oh, what a simple little ditty. And then I remember doing that acoustically and watching the guitars, like, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. Yeah,
and really well written. And
he can coin a phrase, but to see him, all right, I'm secure. Bruno Mars is doing it. Bruno Mars, it's funny, all of his stuff, I would consider it the B96 mix. Oh, when I see your face, then you see the dude perform it live, and he's like, yeah, but this is how I hear it. This is how I want to hear it. And suddenly it's like Marvin Gaye's doing it. Every time I hear him do one of his pop hits live, there's horns and the arrangements thumping, and now we have Uptown Funk, where now he was able to say, all right, even though it's not, he didn't write it, but I mean, he had a hand in it, to hear him, okay, now I can actually do what I want to do the way I want to do it. But I think he's been kind of cheating the system too. It's like, here's your pop mix, but when I perform it,
yeah, and you probably have a better relationship with Bruno Mars stuff than I have. But I to me,
listen to him live and you will freak out.
I've seen him on the Grammys. I mean, he's a tremendous performer. His music to me feels like he's the most successful cover band in America.
Oh yeah, well, Uptown Funk is like 5 different tunes.
Yes.
However, one can also argue that just about every cover tune that comes out, it's just so.
Well, and that's the thing.
So, he decided stylistically to at least bring something to the forefront that nobody was thinking about pushing as much, with the exception of
done it in 20 years.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and that's the thing. You know, for me, it's been ear candy to hear him live.
Sure.
You know,
He's a monster performer, but for me, it's like, I mean, not to open this can of worms, but there's been plenty of talk about
Bruno Mars fans, close your ears.
Right, about Blurred Lines, and about how Robin Thicke, and frankly, most of my musician friends feel like, as much as they might not be Robin Thicke fans, that he got a raw deal. That he, while yes, it's very, very, very close. I mean, it's almost identical to these various songs. That like, hey, they did everything right and they got burned, I think, in part because people are kind of dark on Robin Thicke, And I think about Uptown Funk by comparison. It's just like, well,
so many tunes.
That's so many songs. I mean, like,
Jam on it.
Well, I think about Jam by Michael Jackson. Like that's right there. Fa fa da fa 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 da fa. I mean, that horn line is almost verbatim.
It's
I went and listened to them
side
by side. Yeah.
It's about 5 songs.
And so it's like, I think that we haven't meted out equal justice under the law with this, And I
think you are right. They were after Robin Thicke because a lot of people stopped liking him.
Well, you know what? It's funny. So it was a jury trial, right? Yeah. And my friend John, who's a law professor at University of Chicago, he brought up a really interesting point. He's like, I don't know why they do jury trials with stuff like that. Because, like, really, that should be decided by experts,
That's
in the field.
Point.
Like these were people, you and I could have been called for jury day. We probably would have been dismissed because we're musicians, but like we could have been called to be jurors for that. And so who are these jurors that now have kind of cast a pall over the music world? Like they might have just been, it could have been anybody.
Forget about other people's music. Let's talk about yours, man. Because you had the solo CD, and I've got the djembe story. We played the Michael McDonald game. I mean,
we should actually do an entire podcast of just the Michael McDonald game. But
that might become. I think we have to work on that. Yeah,
yes,
I'm in.
Yes.
But no, seriously, if what do you want people, fans, and then more importantly, a lot of the listeners who for this podcast who are just meeting you. Mm-hmm. What do you want them to know about your stuff, the material in the CD? Like, what do you want people to know about it going in?
Well, first of all, it was a thrilling process to record. I went down to Nashville, and I had worked with these 2 guys as producers. Nico Exitis, who's a terrific drummer, has been playing with Matt Wirtz for a really long time and touring around with him and lots of other artists. And then Cody Fry, who's another one of these Swiss Army knife guys, plays guitar, keys, programming, vocals, and he's been in Ben Rector's band for a long time. Still is in Ben Rector's band, and is also like subbed in with Hunter Hayes, and is a production assistant with Charlie Peacock. And the kind of neat part of it is that these guys are actually both former students of mine. And and so like we had worked together way back when, and they kind of jumped at the chance to produce this record. And so we brought in Tim Marks, who's recorded with like Lionel Richie and Jewel, and he'd played like on the first 3 Taylor Swift records.
Dude, you have some contacts, my
It was
friend.
Well, and it was like that was sheer luck as far as this friend of mine from Western, who I had been working with doing like a record for my dad. He was playing, and he's like, "Oh, you're going down to Nashville. Please look up my friend Tim." And I did, and before I even had the chance to ask him, he's like, "Well, I'd be happy to play on your record." And I'm just like,
"Did you record most of it out there, or?"
I recorded all of it.
Oh, wow!
Yeah. So I made probably like 4 or 5 trips down there, starting at the beginning of last year.
Okay.
And sometimes as much as 10 days. Otherwise, like 4 or 5. And so it was a blast to record. We recorded drums in the studio of a guy named Jim Moose Brown, who is Bob Seger's drummer.
Dude.
But he also co-wrote "It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere." And
really?
he has...
Who is making these contacts for you?
Well, so the studio that was through Cody and Nico.
Okay.
Tim Marks, I thankfully just reached out to him and we met up for coffee down the street from where I was staying. And
is he living out there?
He lives down there.
Okay.
Yeah. He lived in Detroit for a long time, but he's been in Nashville now for a long time. And and Cody and Nico kind of helped put a lot of stuff together. They're producing the record. They put a lot of stuff together for that. And they got this guy, Mark Trussell, to play guitar on a song, who's Billy Currington. If you're a country fan, he's Billy Currington's guitar player.
All right.
Really fine player. And so it was a thrill to record. It was a great... I've now, this is the third time I'm mentioning how not prolific I am as a writer, and I determined that I wanted, to make it a full album, it needed to be at least 9 songs. Mm-hmm. And I went down there with about 5 or 6 songs, and I was like, I've got other ideas. I'm going to, see what, bounce stuff off the producers and see what things, and so there were several songs that got written down there.
Now, and all you, or were you collaborating at all?
All me. I mean, I should say on one of the songs, Cody really just he's like, you know what? I want this section is buried a little bit. I want to vault it up. I want it to occur more. And so we took the guts of the tune and rearranged it pretty substantially. I played the song. I think I debuted it at Space in Evanston like that December before. I got to play a show with Dolly Varden, the great Chicago band up there. And that was in its old form, and then we turned it around. It's a song called "Never Here." It's on the album, and we really took on a great life of its own. It's completely it's not a completely new tune, but it was like we ended up just changing the order of things and making, because it was one of those that kind of was more sectional as opposed to verse chorus, and then it became much more of kind of that we took this section
which track
and repeated
was that?
It's called "Never Here."
So let me ask you this, and this is good for people who have heard the CD, and it's also great for people who are going to hear it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's musically or conceptually, or just from a production standpoint, when you look back on it now that it's done, what's making you smile about? Your CD,
a lot of things. Well, this is something that I know you can appreciate as a singer. By nature, by virtue of the fact that I was the lead singer on all of it, is going to be more singing than I'd ever had to do on a record before. Uh-huh. But it was also more challenging singing. And again, it's as a writer, I'm not saying, I'm going to write this melody really high, just on a whim.
Yeah.
It's just these songs came out, and a number of them were just really challenging. And so I, at the end of the sessions for lead vocals, it was a little bit of limping across the finish line because it was just so demanding,
Wow.
and the performances don't sound like they limped, but it was
you pushed it. Though.
It was I just had enough voice to get it out, because it's for people that haven't done a lot of recording, it's you don't, your typical gig. As a singer, if you're doing original music, you're probably not playing much more than an hour and 15 minutes. You're in a recording session, depending on how well you're feeling vocally, it could be 4 or 5 hours, and you kind of oftentimes try to avoid that just to avoid fatigue. But it was I was going back and forth to Nashville. There was only so much time that I had, and so it was a really challenging process.
That's an intense 4 or 5 hours. I mean, you're vocalizing, you're producing, your voice is on. It's not okay, I better take 20 minutes to rest my pipes first. No, and you're on the clock at that's intense.
Well, unfortunately, we were at Gardenside Studios, which is where Cody was living at the time. And so it wasn't on a clock, for that.
Oh, that's cool.
But I was on a clock from the standpoint that I'm only in Nashville for so long.
Yeah.
And it's I could have recorded things and sent it to them, but I didn't want to do that. It's way better for them to do it. Their capacity with the technology is way better than mine.
But we're going to hear you, stretching in a way that you hadn't stretched before.
Yeah.
Recording. That's great. That is on tape. Forgive my phrasing, but still, I mean, that's what people will hear. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite song / story? You can't say favorite song because I think there's something you just can't. That's your piece. The entire. But I mean, is there a story that kind of?
There's some really nice stories that kind of came out of the record. I tell some of these live, but the last song in the album is called "Nothing Left to Say." And
what a great title for the last song of an album.
It just kind of worked out, right?
That is great.
And it started a friend of mine who had been for a little while had been a girlfriend, and we just always been at a real fondness, that continues to this day. She was getting married, and she invited me to the wedding, and the timing, was like, I'm not going to be able to come in for it. And her bridesmaid was like, hey, we're accepting, video tribute, because it's a very artistic person, and so people were doing video tribute and art, like, hey, write her a poem, whatever. And I'm like, I know what I'll do. I'll write her a song. And to kind of celebrate,
wow.
And I thought I'd do that. So I start writing the song, and as you and other songwriters know, sometimes songs go whatever way they want to go.
Sure.
And it started going down this really dark thing. And I'm like, I can't have this be the song. I'd be like, hey, happy wedding. Here's the saddest song I've ever written. I'm like, I can't do it. So I sent a card instead.
Nice.
But I took the song and recorded it on the album. And
did she have any idea, though, that song was originally meant?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. And, I don't know. Like, and that was the thing, is that it's like you hear there is this sense of longing in there. And it was just like, okay, this isn't our story anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is a story of two different people, than us. But it came from a very,
that's awesome.
From a very loving place,
real place. I mean, yeah.
And there was, let's see, what's another? Well, the second song, which is one that we ended up kind of pushing to radio a little bit, and it was for while the campaign was going, we had it playing probably like 6 or 7 radio stations across the country,
Nice.
which was cool. But this one was written down in Nashville, and it, sometimes you write a song and you're like, this is my manifesto. This is what I believe about life. This is my inner core. This is everything that I stand for.
Yeah.
This is not that song.
All right.
This is not that song. This is, I was, I had just gotten engaged, and I was having this conversation over the, I'm in Nashville. My fiance is across the country, and we're having this emotional conversation, and all of a sudden, call drops, right? And you're just like, oh man, you frantically try to call back, and we keep missing each other, getting those voicemail. And I look at my phone, and I'm just kind of livid now. I'm like, I could totally throw you across a wall right now, or throw you against a wall right now. And I'm like, there's something in the kind of, organic fire right now that is song-worthy. I don't know what yet. But I ended up, the song's called Pick Up. And
Perfect.
And there ends up being a reference to taking a phone and throwing it against a wall.
But that is so great. Those are two very emotionally based, like real. You pulled from a real place for both of those. I like the way the other one kind of spiraled.
Yeah, and it's
You're writing about like these maybe loving thoughts and feelings, but then you're just remembering that one time she yelled at you for keeping a toilet seat up. Like, son of a bitch, why did you do this? Why? Here, I hope you have a happy life. I wrote this for you.
As you say, that's verse 3.
That's verse 3.
I didn't know you'd listen to it. Thanks, man. That's great.
Oh, that's the best though, because you don't know. It's organic. It's they have a life of their own, even when you're creating them.
Yeah.
Everybody loves to say. I can't remember. Was it Da Vinci who said, once a piece
Are
of
you
art.
that old?
Yeah, we were hanging out at Uncommon Ground, and he
or Descartes coffee
200 years ago.
I drink, therefore I am. Right.
But he what did he say? I think he was the one who coined that first phrase of once you have a piece of art, and once you complete a piece of art, it's no longer yours. You share it for the rest of the world. But I think we forget the fact that sometimes while we're creating, it becomes something else. It's this unbridled horse, and you're trying to go somewhere, but sometimes it just goes right. And good for you for letting it consistently keep going where it was going, so that you didn't like rein it in and make it something else, which possibly would have still been real, but man, it's organic, So that's
and
cool.
again, it's like I think with some more experience, with some years of experience as a songwriter, I think that you kind of you're able to you don't try to force a square peg into a round hole,
right?
It's like wrapping cables, like a cable. If you do it right, the cable will tell you when it wants to get, like people try to force these cables, and that's why they look terrible. But it's that you actually say to yourself, I mean, this will sound a little, I don't know, this might sound a little strange, but that you're actually just the channel through which this idea is passing, and that all you want to do is allow it to come through. And whatever it is great,
So I think it's perfect.
And it will be better if you don't exert that much influence on it.
And I think that goes back to that whole writing different things, different styles, because sometimes we are not only the genesis, but the true carpenter of the piece. And then there are other times that even though it's coming from us, we're simply the messenger. And it's cool stuff. Oh man, man. Well, people need to like grab your stuff and hear it and listen to it and find it.
It's hard to grab when it's digital.
Yeah.
It's like
just grab it. They're mentally grabbing
grab it. Onto your laptop.
They need to grab onto their laptop and make the purchase. I guess I should wrap this up with how we met, because we hinted at this Disney thing. And
we started that about 2 hours ago.
This is an experience that not many people get. Because where were you? I was in between like acts, and I got the call, and they said line it up, and I went to the cattle call, and they said McDonald's needs somebody, and I remember thinking, they handed me a page. You and I might have met at the audition. I can't remember.
I think it's possible.
But I remember looking, and they wanted me to sing My Girl, and I'm like, I've sang this a million times. It'd be fine. Right. As soon as I said that, I heard 5 dudes sing it just as well as I've ever sang it in my life, if not better. But I got it. Where were you when you got that call for that gig?
Well, so it was, and so here's an interesting things coming full circle.
Yeah.
The person who called me or who recommended me for that gig, I talked about Cody Fry, the producer.
Folks, this is going to be a great, his crazy gig that we got. It's nuts.
It was his dad, Gary Fry, who is a very successful and influential. He wrote most of the McDonald's commercials that you and I grew up with.
Okay.
He did the Welcome Yule thing at the CSO for years.
No, I didn't get to meet him in this process, though, did I? Okay.
No, because he was basically, I think Jeff probably was just like, hey, I need singers, and he talked to Gary, and Gary recommended me.
Folks, Jeff Morrow, he was one of the Green Giant voices, I think. He had one of the runs of the ho, ho, ho. I think there was somebody else. I can't remember if he ever did a Tony the Tiger thing or not, but he was in it, and he was jingle guy. Like a local legend when jingles really paid out.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember being in the audition, and they did a lot. They didn't put notes in front of people, but they did some ear testing. Sing this back,
Yeah.
But
and
anyway,
this is down at Chicago Recording Company.
No, this was at Leo Burnett.
Oh, you're right. You're totally right.
Fancy ad,
totally right.
Leo Burnett.
Yeah,
and I remember walking, and at the time, I needed something like that. I remember it was 20 minutes after, and I got the call, and you got it. Like, I mean, where were you in life when that call came?
Yeah, well, so I was playing and down the line, and so it was otherwise like really busy, but so it was just kind of a cool additional opportunity. And so, of course we start,
you were so good, and you were just so smart. I remember meeting you and thinking like, this guy may know more about singing than all of us. Like this guy really truly, and there were 5 of us.
Yeah, 5 of us. And there, of course, McDonald's was trying. So this is the weird thing that we were asked to do so McDonald's, perhaps not known to most people in the world, they have a convention every 2 years, the biannual. And the reason that it's biannual is because it's so unbelievably enormous
Jerry
that you
Seinfeld
can't-
was there.
Yeah, well, yeah, he had
Like a video thing.
yeah. Well, so I mean, what they had 4 jumbotron. It's down in Orlando. They had 4 jumbotron screens.
If you were looking at it, you would think you were watching the American Music Awards.
Right. And you would think that 4 jumbotron screens was excessive, but it was set up in front of what I think was 30,000 chairs. Like that big.
Yeah,
because it's aimed for McDonald's operators from around the world.
Around the world, right.
And of course McDonald's partners with these huge people for their, for their Happy Meals. And
Destiny's Child was broken up, but however, pay them $1 million.
Yes.
They're back together.
Destiny's Child performed at that. So you know what? It's so funny, Robby. I have never name checked Destiny's Child when I say like people I've performed with.
Yeah.
I totally
Boom.
should.
You were on the bill.
Beyonce and I, man, we walked the same stage.
Yeah, you
Yes.
guys, you were like, hey, you want to try my special sauce?
I miss you, B. I miss you, B.
Oh, because
I think about you all the time.
And oddly enough, Seinfeld was on there promoting the
B movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we walked off the stage, and Lance Armstrong walked on. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah. And so yeah, it's this cavalcade of people that are all doing big things
Our
at
trailer
McDonald's.
was next to Fantasia's. I don't think we got to meet her.
Right.
Heather Headley.
Heather
ran
Headley
into
was
her.
down there. That was in the throes of the Lion King. You know?
Right. It was people. It was crazy,
Yeah.
and we had such a great trailer. Remember that? Do you remember the big bowl of M&Ms? It was a fancy silver bowl of peanut M&Ms.
This is what Robbie's thinking about. like we shared stage at Destiny's Child. Did you see the M&Ms?
This is a fancy bowl.
Gracious.
But the funniest thing is we're doing these amazing arrangements via Jeff Morrow. All you need is love. There's quite a few tunes, but the only thing was the catch was at the end of everything somewhere we had to go da 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 or ba da
Yes.
ba da ba 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 at the end of everything.
Well, and the other thing that was
To remind us what we were doing, no matter how fancy the arrangements were.
Well,
Bring us
also,
back.
I mean, our main job, like we had a performance at the end, like in their little cafe area,
Right.
but our main job, because they're, amidst all these stars doing
Yes.
their speaking and performing, they would have people who were bigwigs at McDonald's speaking to the party faithful here, and they had a new director of global marketing.
Yes, God.
Mary Dillon.
You remember the name?
Yeah,
Oh
well,
my
because remember we
God.
had to sing that
Mary
version.
Dillon. All
we
You
had to
Need Is
sing,
Love.
Yes, exactly. And
Mary
and
Dillon's on the scene.
You sang lead on that. I remember that. And Mary Dillon decided that she wanted a 5-guy a cappella group to augment certain points of her speech. That's right. Which is about as weird as anything I've ever heard.
I mean, nothing says
logically,
cheeseburger more than that.
Maybe the emphasis on the cheese. Yeah. But and of course McDonald's wanted to have this, this appearance of something multicultural, right?
Yeah.
So they get me, long-haired white dude, and they get Ben Wilson, long-haired white dude.
He was American pie-ish, and I was the Latino.
Yes, Robby was the Latino. Starring Robby Celestin as the Latino. I was like, and there was, and then there was, Pastor Chris Harris, one of the most amazing singers I've ever heard.
That guy was sick.
And a pastor at Bright Star Church down in the South Side, and then Kevon Carter, who's a music minister out in the western suburbs.
Kevon was amazing.
I suppose southwestern suburbs.
I've been with some. I've shared the stage with some great vocalists, but man, that was a collection of singers, man.
It was a great group, so we're singing. Here's this great group of singers, and what are we doing? We are augmenting the speech of the new director of global marketing for McDonald's by singing great arrangements of classic songs, and some like new songs like I'm Coming Out, whatever, and but then throwing ba-da-ba-ba-ba at the end of each one. It was, to say it was surreal, maybe understating it, and then on top of it, where are we staying? At the Animal Kingdom Resort Hotel.
They put us
at
up.
Disney World.
Yeah.
Did we share a room? I don't remember, but it was like you look outside.
I think we had our own.
We had our own rooms, which I think for me, I was like, man, I just got off the road traveling with 3 guys in one room.
And the only time we weren't in that
great.
room, we took the trip to Disney World, which I talked about earlier. If we weren't at Disney World or in our room, we were in our trailer, our fancy trailer, which gave us whatever we needed. It was beyond surreal.
Well, and our rooms, it should mention, looked out on a small wildlife preserve. So you look outside. Oh, look, there's antelopes talking with giraffes.
You were texting. You were constantly like, "Do you guys see the antelope talking to the giraffes?" You gave like a report often.
I was like the animal. I was Animal Planet.
Yeah, you were the king of the text.
It's like in its native habitats.
I just the experience, and then hearing the singers, hearing what you brought to the table, hearing I'll just randomly do a version of "I Want You Back," and I will totally steal a couple of riffs of Pastor Carter. Man, like, oh my gosh.
Oh man.
But there's just great singers. I don't know if you remember, but I was like becoming sappy. Like one of our last like lunches, I'm like, I don't want this to end, because I loved the hang.
It was a great hang. It was
and
a
I just
fantastic
thought, how
hang.
can this level of talent and then such great personalities? How do we not keep this? And naturally, I mean, we'll have to have just a reunion party and. Watch McDonald's.
Well, Ben ruined it by moving to Colorado.
He moved to Colorado.
I hope you're listening, Ben.
Way
We're
to go,
upset.
Ben.
We're
Way
upset.
to go. Such a nice.
Ooh, I have opportunities in some other part of the country. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ben, with all seriousness, we love you and miss you. I hope that you and your family are wonderful.
But come on back when you can.
We're missing you.
No, it was great, and the arrangements are sick. The vocals are sick. So and again, I may even I've got to make this all make sense. I may just edit out because I completely messed up my history with you. But I owe you so much. I owe you so much because you were doing. I didn't realize how. I thought you were cool, but I didn't realize how cool. I'm like, wait, this guy's touring, and I didn't really see what you were up to in your fan base until I got back home, and then I thought, wait a minute, And I'll quickly retell the story because seriously, any fans of mine listening, and thank you to the people who still buy voice prints. This guy, if it does happen, my CD happens. It maybe happens years after this. It happened faster because of you. Simply because I'm sitting next to you on the plane and I'm saying I have these songs written, but I'm in a band. I'm leaving the band. I don't know what to do. And you just do your CD. Just do it. And I went home and started figuring out how to record these songs after that conversation with you on the plane, and I can never thank you enough for that because that put me on a path that I found a different branding. I found myself because of you, because I was scared out of my mind to do it. So if any of you guys wondering who Derek was, who I thank in the liner notes, we're talking to him now, and I can never thank you enough, and I think the scene can't thank you enough because not only are you good at what you do, and it obviously shows, and I'm so glad that you're still moving. You got the down the line thing. Now you're doing your thing. God only knows what's next, another solo thing, another group. Whatever you do, I love the fact that you're not stopping. You're still going and you're going. But besides that, you are the ambassador vocalist because every time somebody needs somebody, you're the first person who just, generously just throws names out and try this guy, try this girl. Like you really, in a business where sometimes people get overly competitive and almost, I've seen some well-known people try to not name the younger people coming up. It's like, why would you do that?
Sure.
You are so generous in all that you do as a person. You give completely of who you are, which is why I can't wait to hear the CD. But you also give other people. You're just like, here, take this, take that, take whatever works, man. This is what works. And I think that all giving kind of way about you is what makes you special, man. That's what makes you shine. Thanks, you're from the inside out. You're that guy, and we need more of that in all industries. So
well, that's certainly hopelessly kind. I will only offer up that I have been on the receiving end of a really kind of almost uncomfortable amount of generosity, like from forever. I mean, and specifically as far as the beginning of my professional career, when I was moving out to Chicago, I had friends being like, "Oh, well, do this, 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 and this," which just kind of, and on top of it, by the way, when I was, getting the lay of the land here in Chicago, I would ask strangers for directions, and time again, people would stop what they were doing and say, "Oh, okay, so here's what you do.
Wow.
You go up there," and just received kindness from people who knew me and people who didn't.
Midwest vibe, man.
It's the mid. I was about to say it's the mid, and and that just instilled very early on in my time here in Chicago. I've been here 15 years now. This sense of like, absolutely pay it forward whenever you can. And by the way, you will have lots of opportunity to do that. And so whether it's trying to connect a student with like an opportunity coming my way and trying to pass it on to a student, or I see somebody with a map of the city, kind of twisting it around and be like, "Hey, do you know where you're headed? Are you cool?" That it's like there's just so many opportunities to do that, and everybody has them, and certainly anybody that makes music. You have an opportunity to do that, and when you do it's like it's a small thing for you, but it could change the trajectory of somebody else. And so it's like when we were having that fateful conversation on that plane back to Chicago, and it's just like, you know what, no one wants regrets, right? Yeah. No one wants to be in their, in the autumn of their years being, I wish I did that. I wish I did that. It's like, man, unless all of a sudden it's in doing it, you're causing harm to somebody else or you're causing harm to something that you hold dear. It's like, man, go.
No what ifs. Get rid of the what ifs. Yeah.
No one, life is too valuable and precious to put yourself in a position where you've got lots of coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's just like there's and frankly, you know what? There's too much bounty really to be had to allow oneself to feel that way. It's like, hey, there's like you talk about everybody being able to be heard now. On the one hand, it's limiting because everybody can be heard, and therefore lots of people don't get heard, as far as music is concerned. But, just to, it's so possible to like, hey, I have something that's moving for me, that moves me creatively, artistically, go, and because, something I tell my students a lot, if you're a doctor and you make a mistake, it's very possible someone gets really badly hurt. There's a lot of pressure. So my heart goes out to everybody that's in the medical profession. There's a lot of pressure there. If you make a mistake as a if you're performing, or if you put something out there as a recording standpoint, it doesn't quite resonate. No one's gonna die. No one's gonna die. In fact, the only wounds that are gonna happen, maybe a little bruise to the ego, but it's like no one's gonna die. And
that is an acceptable casualty.
and it's like so man, why not?
That's the theme here. Why not, folks?
Yes.
So do what you're going to do. And man, I can't thank you enough for just spending the afternoon with me. It's a blast.
I'd come back for these cookies alone.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to come back. Maybe we'll come back for the Michael McDonald game.
There we go.
Tell these nice people one more time the name of your CD.
So my album is called Feel Better, and my name is Derek Fawcett, and it's been a real pleasure hanging out with Robby here on Chatter of Fact. And the album's available online. My site's derekfawcett.com, and
derekfawcett.com. Spell your last name.
So it's Fawcett, like Farrah, but no relation.
Boom.
And
derekfawcett.com. They can see the shows. They can get the music. Mm-hmm. People, it's called Feel Better, and I'm telling you, whether you meet him personally or musically, Derek Fawcett will make you feel better. So just find the stuff, man, and I'm just glad he was here. Thanks for doing this again, dude. Everybody, have a great day, have a great week, have a great month. Go out and find your smile. Bye-bye. Welcome to my life so far. You'd think by now I'd be a star. I may be long-winded, but hey, there's just so much I have to say. Maybe lick your lips when you're hungry. Maybe drop your head when you're sorry. Maybe shake a bit when you're worried. That's just the way